There you go. Well, welcome, Andrew. It's good to have you with us on this webinar. I've read your paper with great interest and overwhelmed by the magnitude of what you're trying to accomplish. Could you tell me what your cooperative is trying to address in this idea that you have?
Sure, absolutely. And it's certainly a much bigger thing than just my cooperative can do alone. So I'm sure we'll get into that. But I'm part of a worker-owned design build firm, which is basically a firm that, rather than having a separate architect and general contractor on a project, a design build firm designs and builds a project as one integrated company. And so we've basically looked at the building industry, which accounts for about 40% of the world's global greenhouse gas emissions, and seen that about 28% of that 40, or 28 of those 40%, comes from operational emissions. So that's emissions from the use of the building. And the industry has done a lot and worked a lot to build high performance buildings and integrate renewable energies to address those operational emissions. However, the other about 11 of those 40% come from the whole supply chain and creating the materials from extraction to the manufacturing, shipping, building practices, even end of life. And that 11%, 11% on its own is a huge amount of the global greenhouse gas emissions, but it's also important to note that by the time a building has been built, almost 100% of those 11 have been emitted, whereas the operational emissions are more slowly emitted over the course of the building's lifetime. So looking at the International Panel on Climate Changes, they have goals for reducing global greenhouse gases by 2030 and 2050. So looking at those shorter timelines and making sure that the industry is focusing on addressing those, what we're calling embodied emissions in materials, are really, really key to helping meet those targets.
So can you tell me a little bit about what type of services and materials these are available in this supply chain? What are you addressing in the construction industry here?
Absolutely. So us, along with some other folks in the industry, have really started looking at how can we continue building high performance buildings, but also do that with materials that are going to address embodied emissions. And so really focusing on what are called biogenic materials, and that's materials that come from living things. So you can think plants or fungi, so mushrooms, straw, wood, really looking at those things. During their lives, they are sequestering atmospheric carbon and bringing it down into the materials themselves, as well as storing it in the soil. So that's where we start seeing, okay, we have to look all the way to natural resource managers, farmers, and foresters, and what are their practices? Are they doing practices that are building soil and maximizing the carbon sequestration in these materials? And then do we have manufacturers that know how to take those raw materials and turn them into building materials that have the characteristics we need for high performance buildings? Do we have suppliers that are making these construction materials available, designers that know how to specify those materials and building buildings that use those, builders that know how to work with those, and clients that understand the value of building this way and help to create that demand for those. So it's really all the way across the board.
That sounds like a huge undertaking. What are your plans to address that? And is that just a basis of your cooperative? Or are you collaborating with other cooperatives? What's your plan for this?
Yeah, so definitely looking at collaboration throughout the supply chain. You know, like I just mentioned, it's going to take everyone, and it can't just be us. So I think that there's going to be a need for different models at different places. And so I've looked a lot at supply chain integration, supply chain management research. Um, and as it happens, the construction industry has a lot of challenges to supply chain collaboration relative to a lot of other industries due to the specialized nature, a lot of the differentiation in different climatic areas. It's a very fragmented industry with smaller players. There's a lot of specialization, and that often breeds a lot of short-term relationships, distrust, and opportunism in the industry. So just to make it a harder thing
Mhm.
to tackle. But I think cooperative models can really address a lot of those issues really head on. They can build long-term relationships. They can build trust among different stakeholders. So really looking for, okay, where are the leverage points? What are the models that we can start with that might be able to stimulate other models starting up, and really encourage participants throughout the supply chain to refocus on
Mhm.
these embodied emissions.
So this would be initiative of your cooperative. Or do you plan to engage other cooperatives, or are you looking at engaging some of the businesses that are already there that are not cooperatives in a cooperative venture? Like, what level of cooperation are we talking about here?
Sure. Honestly, I think it's going to be all of the above. So my design build firm, New Frameworks, we do partner in a lot of ways, whether it's just trying to find good relationships with subcontractors in the industry. We're also part of networks such as the Northeast Sustainable Energy Association.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of builders and designers within that that are starting to, a lot of them have been more focused on the operational side, but are starting to see the importance of this work. And actually through, our 9 or 10 years of being part of that, I think we've just been an example of how cooperative models can really be incredibly valuable. And we've seen some of the other businesses in our cohort look at transforming into co-ops. So there's, that option of leading by example. But really a key leverage point that I see is design build firms, particularly as they're directly working with the client, and then all subcontractors, suppliers, et cetera, have to essentially go through them. I see that as a key leverage point, and I think that purchasing cooperative comprised of design build firms as
Mhm.
the member is a really key leverage point that could create that pressure on the rest of the supply chain to start building those models. And I could see more worker cooperatives, producer cooperatives as, the farmers and foresters creating the raw materials, worker cooperatives, or even multi-stakeholder in manufacturing. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for different models throughout. But I guess I've kind of narrowed in on that purchasing cooperative as a great first step that I certainly hope to find some people that would like to continue pushing on that. And whether that purchasing cooperative is all worker-owned cooperative members or is a variety of different businesses, I think I still need to honestly do some market research to see is there enough volume of worker cooperative design build firms within a region, a climatic region that makes sense um, uh, to have it there. I think more likely it's going to have more of a plurality of business types. And I hope that similar to within the Northeast Sustainable Energy Association, that being part of that might encourage some of those companies to engage more in the cooperative movement. We've seen that there's a solar purchasing cooperative that's a lot of members within there have started looking at transforming.
How or what sort of level of optimism do you have that this would succeed within the traditional business model? And is this type of collaboration really dependent upon a cooperative model where the traditional business model won't work?
So I think it is really important, and some of the pieces I brought up of the distrust and opportunism and fragmented nature of the industry being such huge challenges that different attempts at supply chain collaboration have not necessarily focused on green building or embodied carbon, but supply chain collaboration has tried, people have tried to implement that within the construction industry. And I think those hurdles have continued to block a lot of the success in that. Research also is very clear that in a lot of places, certainly in the northeast of the United States where I am, that the industry is dominated by white men and also a hegemonic image of masculinity. And that I think really deters a lot of people from coming into that. I think cooperative structures allow or provide a better structure that certainly still need to have proper management and everything going into it to create strong democratic practices, participatory cultures, but can really be used to create a more inclusive culture, encourage more diverse folks in terms of gender, race, sexuality, ability to come in. And I think those cultures really can foster these collaborative attitudes that are going to be key to building partnership throughout an entire supply chain in an industry. Right. Innovation is going to be so integral to building this. It's going to have to be people coming in saying, all right, I want to build this partnership, and then figuring out how to do it together. Right. There isn't someone that's going to come in and be like, here's the model, here's your processes to do that. So it's going to take people that are coming with diverse skill sets and diverse perspectives and feeling authentically empowered to share those and come together and want to work together.
And also share the risk in this, because this is going to be a new venture, and the construction industry isn't not very good at taking risks, because they're the ones on the hook for when your house doesn't perform well. So they need to know that there's other people in that collaboration that are willing to share that risk.
Absolutely. And I think just along the lines of, who's going to say, yes, I want to be part of this. And like you're saying, construction industry has a lot of risk in general. And I think there can be really big, fluctuations in demand in the market, which is also part of the reasoning for the fragmentation of the industry. So I think a lot of companies want something that has a lot of promise, and I think that's also part of why we've seen some of the folks within our networks start looking to my company, is that we have found that the way we're building and the way we're running our organization has really brought a lot of demand. We're booked into 2022. For a lot of projects. We've been hiring through the pandemic, and that's just been consistently growing of the demand for the type of work we're doing, and for working in the ways, the processes we have, the way we communicate, the way we bring people together to work on this. We're really seeing that is valued and has market value.
Yeah. Well, that's market value is one of the criteria, but the other issue is the climate. and the social benefits of this type of collaboration. So wish you all the best on this. And I know that you're just in the infancy stages of this. So we look forward to hearing more of this in the near future. So good luck.
And I appreciate that, Eric, and anyone who you know, finds that they're inspired by this and is trying to engage in this work. You know, we need everyone. So happy to connect with folks.
Good. With this, a collaboration across borders too.
Absolutely.
Good enough. Thanks very much.
Adios, Eric. Bye-bye.
Okay.
I almost hit leave meeting just out of habit there.